morning all, and we've got a bit of an echo.
2 seconds.
Are we okay now? It sounds okay now. It was Councillor Birch. Anyway, so welcome everyone to the special People Scrutiny meeting. It's Wednesday the 16th of July, and there's only one item on the agenda, and that's the review of the Housing Social Grant Programme. And it's a really interesting report, and I'm sure that people will have lots of questions, and there's a lot of interest about how we support homeless people within Monmouthshire, so that's going to be a good report to look at and for Scrutiny to manage. We have opened this up to members that aren't actually on the People Scrutiny Committee, so welcome. And we'll move to item number 1, which is apologies for absence.
Chair, we have apologies for absence this morning from Councillor Martin Grocott, who is going to be subbed by Councillor Jill Bond, and we have apologies from Councillor Penny Jones, who is being substituted by Councillor Anne Webb.
Thank you for that. Can I move to item number 2, which is declarations of interest? Shall we do that as and when? People happy with that? Yeah. So we move on to item number 3, which is review of the Housing Social Grant Programme. And I'm just looking at the Cabinet member. Sarah, would you like to introduce the report?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would. So we're looking here at the services which are commissioned using the housing support grant which we receive from Welsh Government primarily, which come under the collective title of housing support, but actually are a very diverse range of services. So thank you for the opportunity to explain the approach that we're taking to recommission there. The Council has a range of long-standing relationships with third sector providers of specialist and generic support for people who have specific needs or in difficult situations, which all relate in some way to meeting that household's housing need, either by providing them with supported housing or a place in a refuge, being safe at home, or with support aimed at helping them to avoid becoming homeless, or to make a successful transition to independent living in a permanent home. So most of those contractual and funding arrangements go back to before the pandemic, in some cases to the previous supporting people regime. And currently, as I say, the funding envelope for those services is the annual allocation of housing support grant, which we receive from Welsh Government. I have to stress the current services are largely excellent and very much represent productive partnerships which have been developed over many years. The reason why I'm really pleased we've had the opportunity to bring this scrutiny is because of the importance of these services which work with people at the most vulnerable moments of their lives and where we're spending considerable sums of public money. They're also services largely provided by well-regarded local charities and housing associations employing local staff. And I think they really deserve a recommissioning process which is transparent and objective and put the citizens receiving that support at the centre of our thinking. Obviously, we're also obliged to ensure the best outcomes for the money spent and to demonstrate that through a fair and accountable procurement process. But I really did feel that this was too important an issue to be treated merely as a routine procurement exercise, and I'm grateful for your scrutiny before we go forward. So, as Ian will set out, we're working in stages. We approved the Rapid Rehousing Transition Plan at Council in 2023, and there's been engagement with service providers, and some services have been reshaped or extended or discontinued as need has evolved, alongside an expansion of temporary housing and the development of new homes. the council's legal duties around homelessness have changed since the pandemic, and we're expecting them to change again as the Welsh Government's homelessness and social homes allocation makes its way into law. And we also know that we have more clients now with complex support needs in temporary accommodation, which has been part of the rationale behind the repurposing of the former Seven View care home. So the housing team have worked with support providers to strengthen the monitoring with a focus on outcomes, and all the current providers have been issued with interim contracts, and there's been pre-tender engagement with existing and potential service providers. In order to give each service sufficient attention, the procurement process is planned to be on a rolling basis. And I think where we want to get to is having 3 to 5 year funding arrangements, partnership arrangements, with organisations who are providing services, to be clear whether those services are best provided by the council directly or by third parties with particular expertise, services which are fairly funded, robustly monitored, and we're clear that they are achieving positive outcomes and not duplicating other interventions. So we shouldn't have support workers from several different agencies going to the same address unless there's a particular reason why that is the right thing. I have to say, good support workers are like gold dust, and I don't want anything we do in recommissioning services to make anybody feel uncertain about their future career. And I'm also keen to ensure that we are hearing the views of users in those services as we go through the process. Equally, having set out the aims and framework for each services, once we move into the procurement stage, the housing team will be supported by procurement officers, and there'll be a fair and robust tendering process. So before I hand over, can I just take the opportunity to thank everybody who works in the services and to the housing option team for all their hard work in bringing this forward.
Thank you very much, Councillor Birch, for your introduction. And can I move on to Ian to present the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can I start with giving an apology on behalf of Trudy Griffin. She's the Housing Support Grant Manager, and she would have been here today to contribute to the agenda. She's right at the core of this work, but unfortunately she's not very well at the moment, so it's just me, I'm afraid. So I apologise in advance if there's any questions I can't answer. So. But hopefully I can take you through the general principles. But what we did want to take the opportunity of is to, again, just give a good overview of housing support and to stress what an important service it is, or services they are, in Monmouthshire. So that will be the core of my slides at this point. So if I can get it to work. There we go. Right. So again, just as a bit of a reminder, what is housing support? It's very, very much about preventing homelessness, and I will say that the homeless prevention side of things is something that is increasingly evolving. When the original Supporting People came out many moons ago, homeless prevention, it was there, but it wasn't a fundamental building block. But it's an absolutely key part of housing support now. And where homeless can't be prevented, and this is for all homelessness, it's the aim from Welsh Government is for it to be rare, brief and unrepeated. Again, housing support has got an absolutely key part of this. And it's about really getting down to the detail and tackling the root causes of people's issues that are causing homelessness. And wherever possible, can they help people to stay in their homes for longer and not always defaulting to move. So many aspects of it. So it's about people's capability, their independence, confidence, and all about either accessing a home and maintaining a home. The fund is all of the projects that we've got are funded by Welsh Government, and so we're getting nearly £3.5 million for that. I will say at this point, it's not enough on the basis of the needs that we've identified in Monmouthshire, and Welsh Government are aware of that. So examples of types of support, I say any type of housing problem, we can throw a housing support officer into it. It's very much about trying to access alternative suitable accommodation, but assisting people with money, assisting people with benefits and grants, daily living skills. And again, when you think about the context of somebody running a home, it's not uncommon for us to be assisting people who haven't got the skills to run a home and understand their responsibilities, whether it's paying rent, behaving responsibly, etc. But also, and again, this is another really important aspect of it, housing support is a really important bridge to wider support. So again, many homeless clients, they're not in work, but we can bridge the gap between them and employment services. Similarly with if somebody's got health problems, again, we can help bridge the gap with health services. So why is housing support important? Well, as I said, Welsh Government's vision for homelessness is rare, brief and unrepeated, and you don't need me to tell you again that Welsh Government are continuing to review their policy on homelessness. It's a big agenda item for them. It's been going for a number of years, and that journey is continuing. And I say key aspects of that has been addressing rough sleeping, and I say that we've done a lot in Monmouthshire, but that still continues, unfortunately, in Monmouthshire. And as Councillor Birch has said, their expectation of the council is to work towards a rapid rehousing approach. And as I said, homeless prevention is very much a core of that, and it's also about minimising the time people spend in temporary accommodation. So our rapid rehousing priorities in Monmouthshire are to prevent homelessness and get in as early as possible, to increase the supply of affordable and settled accommodation, and housing support is part of this jigsaw. So it's very much about how do we support people to sustain that accommodation. And it's also, rapid rehousing was also about how we can maximise our resources that we can direct towards homelessness. And that can't be in isolation. It's got to be in partnership, whether it's internal or external. So the context for Monmouthshire, again, there's nothing new in here. I've obviously shared with this view on a number of occasions, but by way of a reminder, we are continuing to receive high levels of demand in relation to both homelessness and housing support. I will say, positively, that we're in an improving position. but nevertheless, you know, the volumes and complexities of people that we're dealing with are challenging. You're aware that private rented housing and in Monmouthshire is difficult to access. Rents are unaffordable generally, market rents are high. You're aware that we've got a lack of social housing. We've got a big waiting list, so again, 2,000 to 3,000 people are waiting for social housing in Monmouthshire. And what we do have, which is a particular issue in relation to the report, is we do have a lack of specialist supported housing in Monmouthshire. We've at the moment really there's a bit of mental health accommodation through Mind, and Pobble provides some young persons accommodation, and we need there's the refuge as well, which you've mentioned, but it's not sufficient for the needs in Monmouthshire. And as a result of that, people are accommodated in less suitable accommodation. So we've come from a position where we've had a high use of temporary accommodation. Again, positively, it's an improving situation, but nevertheless, it is still there. And you're all aware that we've been battling trying to reduce the use of B&B. Again, we are making strides in that regard, but as we sit here, there are 20 or so people sat in bed and breakfast. And the context of the whole situation is it's cost the council a lot of money, and the services that we've provided, you know, if we'd continued providing them that base, are not financially sustainable. So big priority for us as a team is how can we get those finances on a stable footing. We're not there yet, but again, it's good to be able to report a positive situation. And as I said, the grant that we get from Welsh Government is not quite what we would like. As a result, we do have unmet need. So to go into the overview of need that we're getting, this is very, very much headline information. So if anybody did want any more detailed information, we can provide that. But we're typically getting about 2,000 referrals per year. So the volumes are high. And just to draw out those probably three challenging areas for us, the number of people that are presenting or asking for housing support, 800 with a mental health need, over 600 with a domestic abuse need, and substance misuse, probably a relatively low number, but nevertheless a really challenging area of support. So at any one time, between ourselves and support providers, we are supporting 900 or so people, 932 as of yesterday, but we aren't meeting the need for everyone. So there is a waiting list, and as I say, we had a waiting list of over 100 people the other day. We've got 15 people waiting for supported housing. That will relate to young people's accommodation, so that's 15 young people that were waiting, and we've got 16 people waiting for Housing First. And you'll probably remember that Housing First is one of our homeless services for people with really, really high needs. So those 16 will be in very high need. And then just give you a little bit more of a feel of what that need looks like. So of the 900 or so that we are accommodating, we've got 140 people that are considered to be in high need, and 18 considered to be in an intensive need. That intensive need, that number of 18 might seem low, but for us, those 18, how do you support those 18 people? And that is a big number for us. I'll come on to the gaps later. And then just to align housing support with homeless need itself, again, just to give you a feel of the volumes. So last year we had 500 enquiries about homelessness, 400 applications. The staff are continually carrying a caseload of about 400 open cases. And all of those individual cases will at some point touch housing support. So it's working on the basis that a presentation comes in, that applicant will need housing support, whether it's high level or low level. And then another area, so it's not just about people coming through the door. Obviously, we are accommodating people. And as we sit here at the moment, we've got 161 households in temporary accommodation. All of those need housing support. And we're currently providing that all through floating support. But part of us helping them to recover from their homeless circumstances, but more importantly, helping them move on. Housing support is very, very much part of the landscape. And just to remind you, we've got 7View coming online. We're just almost within touching distance of that accommodation. So we'll have 17 units there who will all be provided with on-site housing support. So in terms of the report itself, for me, this is a massively important piece of work for me and the team. We've got as Councillor Birch has alluded, we've got a programme that is ready for reviewing, and I'm confident that implementing that review will deliver a lot of benefits, obviously for clients themselves, but for the council as well. So the first part of it is it's a real opportunity to make sure all of those services are aligned with the council's priorities. Obviously, one of those is homelessness and rapid rehousing. So we can systematically make sure that the spec is completely aligned with those. We think there's opportunities to increase value for money and economies of scale. We've got a lot of projects, and there are opportunities to bring things together. So, quite naturally, you would reduce management overheads. We know that it will deliver cost benefits and cost avoidance. Again, the obvious one at the moment, the amount of time, the amount of money we have spent in respect of homelessness. Increased homeless prevention, for example, should help to take the pressure off temporary accommodation. A Wales-wide and a sector-wide issue has been support worker salaries, and as a consequence, there have been issues with staff retention and staff recruitment. Providers have experienced this for quite some time, and Welsh Government have been well aware of that challenge. But what this really does, again, it does help us with, is it helps the council to support providers and help them to provide the real living wage for support workers, and that's a minimum. So that's an important. And so if we can get to a stage where our provider staffing is more stable, again, I think that would be good for Monmouthshire. As I said, we've got small projects, and because some of those projects are small, they're not resilient enough. So 1 or 2 staff go off, and then you've got a relatively big gap in provision. But also smaller projects, a reduced number of projects, should I say, will help us with contract management. At the moment, we've got a lot of contracts. I can't remember what it is now, but it's probably approaching 30. And for us as a team to manage those contracts, for my liking, we're spread a little bit too thinly. So less projects will enable us to put a bit more intensive focus on individual contracts. And at the end of the day, there's still there's law that we've got to comply with. We've got the council's standing orders that we've got to comply with, and so again, this piece of work obviously will make sure that we are compliant with all those requirements. Sorry about a pop-up, which I can't get rid of. So the current focus of the team has been to establish short-term direct awards for other providers. So all the providers know exactly where they stand, and understand that these short-term direct awards regularise their situation in terms of having contracts with the council, but also create us a breathing period of where we can proactively prepare and on a stage basis implement this programme of tenders. So that's the period. That's been the focus of the team, and we're just coming out of that now. So when we've finished this programme of tendering and review, because of the lack of budget, I anticipate we will still have these issues. So we have got gaps that we can't deliver on at the moment. So mental health screening, we haven't got our own dedicated mental health supported accommodation. 7View, we are reliant on 24-hour security as opposed to 24-hour support. We haven't got a complex needs system. We think there's more that we can do in terms of domestic abuse. We know social services could benefit from a contribution in relation to one of their schemes, and it's not uncommon for local authorities to have hospital discharge schemes. So, and then where we have got services, we've got young person services, we've got generic, hoarding, we've got substance misuse and housing first. Great services playing a really important role, but they're not big enough. And in terms of horizon scanning, again, Councillor Burge has mentioned already that Welsh Government are looking to strengthen their homeless policy with homeless legislation, and and we've got the homeless and social allocation bill that is out, and we know that will, firstly, it will probably create additional demand for the council. So we're bracing ourselves for additional people in temporary accommodation. Might result in people having lengthier stays, but we know that there are likely to be implications for housing support. So there's likely to be a duty that falls on the housing support directly, which is a change from the current situation. So that's my blurb. I have got a case study if that's of use or interest, if you want me to go through that. But
I think that would be really helpful.
That would be useful. Okay.
I did notice that you left off the care leavers bit of your presentation. The care leavers bits. There's the bill. The bill itself is widening the responsibilities, and that's just another example. It's not housing support directly related, but it's another homeless obligation that we can expect the council to have. I know as part of the corporate parenting discussions that we have, there is a big issue about affordability and getting people leaving care into their own accommodation. So yeah.
Yeah, okay. And I think and again, I think indirectly that's where housing support comes in, because we have too many young people coming through, and can we further strengthen those support arrangements for young people? So.
Thank you. Before you move on to the case. Sorry, I forgot to put the microphone on. Councillor Powell's got her hand up.
Yes, I don't know whether this has have any effect, but now that the empty houses council tax has been going up massively, do you see any chance of these empty houses being released that can be rented, or is that rather a wide hope?
I think there's positively. I know that the premium that we're charging has definitely had an impact. So I don't know the figures off the top of my head, but I do know there has been a positive improvement on the number of long-term empty homes. Running alongside the premium, 2 staff in my team are engaging regularly with empty home owners, trying to encourage them to take a step of some sort. I think the reality is, though, those empty homes haven't been coming our way. No. And if they have, it's probably in relatively small numbers. So it's people. It's people bringing those properties for either to live in themselves or to sell or potentially rent outside of us.
Yes.
So it's it's worked. It's benefited. It's been positive in one way, but I say it's not brought masses to the table for us.
Thank you.
Councillor Howarth, can I just ask Ian to finish his presentation and then we'll go to questions? Is that okay? Yeah. So should we move to the case study?
Okay. So we had a resident attend a council cost of living event. I can't remember when it was, probably last year, and that individual needed benefits advice and tenancy advice. I understand there'd been a relationship issue, and as a result, this resident's property was no longer affordable. So there was, if nothing else, a risk of rent arrears. So we had a housing support officer from the council's gateway at that event, and straight away we were able to help that individual. So firstly, we were able to provide top-ups to her rent where she was having a shortfall from our homeless prevention fund, and she was helped to make a homeless application. Around that time, the landlord decided that to serve the resident with a notice and to ask them to leave. So, a piece of prevention work that we did was we routinely check that a landlord has followed the legal process for serving notice, and the landlord hadn't. So we were able to say to the resident, you haven't got to move, and which effectively bought at least another 6 months for them. So there was nothing, no need to move at that point. Housing supports also help them access benefit and a health service for the resident's child. Because we'd frustrated the notice of the landlord, we believe that irritated the landlord, and shall we say there started some non-landlord-like behaviour, and housing support were able to bring in environmental health, who got involved with the landlord, and we also got, and the council's legal services also got involved. But in the core of this, we've got a resident with a child in need, and because of this situation, we offered temporary accommodation. So we gave the chance for that resident to move. The resident actually declined that offer and felt it was better to stay in the property, but because of the child's needs, but we supported them to stay. So they went in isolation, and we had an officer involved with her all the time to help with that. And again, the difficulties with the landlord continued. And again, the housing support officer was able to provide that hand-holding role that was necessary. So part of that was we knew that she needed to move and needed social housing property. So the support worker enabled them to get an emergency banding through home search, which would facilitate a quick move, and actually within a week that move came along, and she was able to get out of a difficult situation that started off as unaffordable, a situation that was difficult in terms of potential homelessness, and a situation in terms of the landlord. So she moved, and she was able to. She was supported with the move and supported with that resettlement, and because of the risk relating to her landlord, there was actually a bit of target hardening equipment fitted to the property. So again, to give it secure. So it's a really good example of how several services were continually working together in the best interest of this client, and it was textbook. I've got to be honest. Actually, it's a really good example. But I think it illustrates different parts and how housing support can kick in. So.
Thank you, Ian. I think that was a very good example of the complexity that your team are dealing with and how it touches on lots of different aspects of that person's life. Can I ask members of the committee if they've got sort of questions that they'd like to raise? I can see that. Can I take Councillor Howarth first, because you had your hand up earlier, and then I'll take Councillor Riley.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and good morning to everyone. Are we into the main report now, or are we going to start with just coming back in again and backwards and forwards? Because I've got quite a few questions, but mine, first one revolves around Ian with landlords. And
you need to speak into the mic a bit better.
Oh,
the mic's a bit further down, and we're actually.
Is that all right?
Yeah, that's lovely. And actually, we're going into the main report now. So, whatever questions that you'd like to, we've got obviously Sarah and Ian in front of us to answer that.
Number one, then, back to landlords. We had new criteria for landlords. New law came in from the Welsh Government, I think, was it last year or something? I can't remember when it was, because I do know quite a few people who have accommodation in the sector, and they were grumbling away and they were getting rid of this and getting rid of that. Has that really helped, Ian, or has that caused us massive problems with the quality, the quantity and the service that landlords used to give us, the law being amended? Because I believe, was it a section 20 that you had to issue, or section 20? That has all changed now, and that was the example you were just using there, that a landlord give notice, and it does cause complications. Is that's my first question. My second question is, we used to be heavily involved with Mellon as well in supplying homes. As we all know, Mellon now have gone to a Newport City Council. Has that affected us in any way, our relationship with our partners in other parts of the Gwent area? Because we used to be part of a consortium in dipping into what was available, and they come to us or we go to them to try and help. I know you've mentioned Seven View there. Seven Views would be a great place, but it's only great if you live in that area. You cannot ship anybody who has local connections in Abergavenny up to Seven View. It'd be virtually immoral to do that if they didn't want to do that. So that is great, but it'd be nice if we could have them kind of places around the county. And I did have one last question, but it was to do with the data that we have there. Things aren't improving really. It's probably quite a level playing field here. We've got some increases in some of the data that you've given us there. Do you feel that your capacity you have, you've said it already, and I've known you many, many years, and I've been saying it for a long, long time, and you've been saying it, you do not have the capacity to deliver, but you're relying on the grant from the Welsh Government. Surely we have a moral duty as a council as well to try and fill these vacant posts. We cannot rely on the grant all the time, because if you had that extra capacity to deliver, it perhaps could save us a lot of money. And I'm only going off whenever we meet to discuss reports. It's always the same conversation. We're under capacity, we're struggling, it's not good out there. That's my 3 questions, Chair. Thank you.
Right, working way through your questions then. First one relates to the Rent Smart Wales changes and renting homes, the Renting Homes Act. I would say as that came in, there were a lot of concerns, and we probably did receive I'll say anecdotal feedback from a number of individual landlords who said, enough's enough. What's the point? But I think overall, I would say the situation hasn't deteriorated too badly. So I'd say it's probably the status quo. And I think what probably has helped us is the fact that now a landlord is required to give 6 months' notice, and that obviously does give us a bit more breathing space. So, but in terms of answering your question, I think we're pretty stable.
Could I just ask, what notice do we have to give a landlord then? So it's 6 months the one way. What notice have you said to a landlord, I want out of this? Is that 6 months as well?
The landlord, if they want to end their tenancy now, they need to.
And if you want to end it?
If we're leasing from a landlord, I can't remember the arrangement. There is a break clause. So it's all on. So it's not on the landlord's favour then. So you could give 4 weeks and get out from there. Yeah. I don't think. Yeah, I think we've. My instinct would be 4 weeks, but I can't remember. But that's in our leasing. Again, I can confirm what the break clause is in there. But yeah, obviously the two are separate in terms of a tenancy with a landlord and our leasing arrangements. So that's that. Melin moved to, so they now Heading, and as you say, that's the former Newport Homes, and it's not made no detriment at all, and we liaise really closely with Heading now, as we've done before. We've got good relationships, and we've always found them really supportive, and I'm not anticipating that to change at all. So looking forward to getting into the detail with Heading.
Just a quick question on Heading then and Melin. Did we actually ever supply Heading, Melin with any social housing grants for developments? We did. How does that then come into the sector for us then? Because it was the grant that we had, so we've helped build their houses. Do we have a cut from that, or let's say there was a shared equity home that we? No.
No. It's just, I say it's very little changes, to be honest with you, in terms of. So obviously they've still got T's and C's that they will have inherited from Melin. So yeah, it won't make any difference.
I think the point was not making a difference, but what it is our social housing grant built homes for Monmouthshire people through Melin. Now them homes are Melin or Heading,
but they're still in Monmouthshire, and they're still within the Monmouthshire pool. So there'll be no risk of them being hoovered up elsewhere. So, Seven View, obviously for us we're really excited about Seven View. Obviously, I've been talking to yourselves for years now about homelessness, and to have had this resource presented to us is brilliant. The team are really excited, and it really does present us with an opportunity to do something different. And try and move away from that, probably more make do. We've got a really good facility, and I said I'd encourage you to, be great if you all came down to have a guided tour. But it's good quality accommodation. It feels nice there, and the important bit is that we've got this dedicated on-site support, which MCC will be managing and controlling, and that's the bit we're really interested. Will that make a difference, and how it will make a difference? And if it doesn't, we will understand it as well. Because at the moment, I don't think we need better understanding out there in relation to housing support. But that's the bit I'm optimistic about. It is a county-wide resource, and there will be people from other parts of the county living there. Obviously, they don't have to, nobody's forced to move. But I think your point is well made that we haven't got an even spread of homeless resources across the county. And we've obviously said a number of times that we've got a disproportionate amount in Chepstow, which isn't ideal, and we acknowledge and accept that. But we do need similar in the north.
On that point, though, with Seven View, you did make it very clear that there are issues with security and funding there, which, as we all know, security will be very expensive if it was something you mentioned I picked up on. The other point I have with Seven View as well is, if I was living in an area not in Wales but very near to that part of our county, what's the criteria then for Seven View for homelessness? Because homelessness, you make yourself homeless, or something happens, you become homeless. Let's say people from over the water, let's say, were given places there, but we had homelessness in Abergavenny area or Monmouth area or whatever. What is the criteria we have? We have to give that need to the nearest person or residency, because if you're homeless, you're homeless. And it is, people have asked me about that. If I'm from another part of the country and I reside not very far away, does that give them the reason to go to Seven View? Thank you.
The way we allocate temporary accommodation is simplistically on first come, first served. So if you presented today, the team would look to identify something as close to your home area as possible, and obviously something of a suitable size. If that wasn't possible, then we would look at what accommodation we've got elsewhere, and that's what the team are doing all day, every day. And the reality is, unfortunately, that it's not uncommon for people to present, say, in Abergavenny, and we need to accommodate them elsewhere. We do make particular provision for people that are in work, and I say we'll make provision as best we can, regardless of the circumstances. But it's and we will look to move people back as well, to their home areas. But I say the reality is we just haven't got the level of provision, and we haven't got the flexibility of the provision, unfortunately. So we do displace, unfortunately. So.
If I may say
staffing side of it.
Sorry, if I may chip in there, I think you're referring to the issues around local connection, and the council is responsible for housing people who have a local connection to Monmouthshire. In some cases, we do have people presenting as homeless who don't have a local connection to Monmouthshire, and are then, advised to report to their home authority. There are concerns of how that is changing with the new Act, that it's becoming more flexible and perhaps recognising the way in which people live now, that they don't spend all their lives in one local authority area, and perhaps have work or family connections to a lot of different places.
I think, can I just interrupt? I think the last question was about sort of the data and actually capacity. So we've got that covered as well. And also, can I just say, Ian, can you take the case study slide down so that people can see who's online? Thank you.
Yeah, can I just come back in on that, because it is something for many, many years has always been, and every councillor who's on screen today, every councillor I've known has always had an issue with residents, people on the housing list or on the waiting list or whatever, saying, why has somebody jumped the queue? Why has somebody done this? Why has somebody done that? Why have they got this? Why they've got that? My point I'm making is we're going to put 7View online. It's going to be there. It's going to be a super duper place. Everybody, every Tom, Dick and Harry, Mary, Jane will want to go into 7View if they've got the capacity to get into 7View, whether they come from Plymouth or they come from Gloucestershire or they come from wherever. My point I'm making is we've got to make sure that it's for people who meet Monmouthshire requirements and standards and criteria for them. The church, as we all know, in the churches in Wales, in Monmouthshire, do lots of work with homeless people, but lots of homeless people come from everywhere. If somebody's doing something good in a county or in an area, you'll find lots of people come because it's good. And that's the issue I'm saying about 7View, making sure that it's for people who meet the standards within Monmouthshire and have been here, whatever, for some time. You're saying there's a new law coming in that may be that everybody could probably be entitled to go to 7View. I'm making my point there about that new direction of supplying need. Thank you.
I think we're bound by the legislation, and whilst we're all very pleased that 7View is coming to fruition, it'll be open and it will provide that support for people who are in housing need and need support. It's only one part of the temporary accommodation that we have across the county, and we are actively leasing and purchasing temporary accommodation around the county. So I suppose when you say that things are getting better, aren't getting better, what is getting better is that we have fewer people in bed and breakfast accommodation and in poor accommodation, and more people where people are in temporary accommodation. It's as far as possible where they need to be, and of the best standard of an adequate standard. I'm not sure that 7View is going to really be a draw for people, but that allocation process, will be challenging, won't it?
I don't.
Can I ask a quick chair's prerogative? Can I just ask a quick question? It is temporary accommodation, 7View, so it's not permanent accommodation. So the people that will be housed initially at 7View will be helped to find more permanent accommodation. Am I right? Okay. Has Simon had his last question answered about sort of have you got enough money and
so the answer
capacity?
To the last question about capacity is I think we've been well looked after as a team by the council. Staffing has probably not far off doubled. And we've had additional budget in recognition of our challenges and our obligations, and I can honestly say we could always find use for additional staffing and additional budget, but I think in this environment and this circumstance, it would be inappropriate for me to be asking for additional resources at this point in time. We've identified other opportunities where we believe there is continued scope to make improvements, and I think that should be our focus. I think the big gap as we speak here is our shortfall in housing support grant, because we know that there is housing support needs that we can't cover. The council's approach at the moment has been to rely on the Welsh Government grant, and I suppose that would be a decision for the council if it didn't really. So.
And I think very often we have to look at some of these services in terms of prevention and in terms of invest to save. In the temporary accommodation, we're bringing down the cost whilst driving up the quality, and moving people attempting to move people through temporary accommodation into permanent homes more quickly. If we can, as with Ian's case study, intervene at an early stage before somebody comes street homeless, if in that terms of case study with a household with a child, relationship breakup, potential homelessness, we could have been looking at a much more intensive support from social care, potentially a child needing to come into care. Now, if we can support people at an early stage and prevent homelessness and support people to live successful, independent lives, there are actually huge savings to the public sector as a whole in terms of the services that they need, as well as being best for them.
Thank you, Sarah. Can we move on to Councillor Riley, and then I'll take Christopher Edwards out.
Thank you, Chair. And thanks, Ian. I thought it was an excellent report, but it has raised lots of questions, obviously. In relation to something that Councillor Howarth has just said about boundaries with Momish, I do want to sort of point out something that Councillor Birch has just said, which is something that was raised last week with a service that's provided in Newport for people who are at risk of taking their own lives. We would hate, wouldn't we, to see somebody not getting a service like that because we provide it. We don't actually provide it here. It's a Newport it's a resource but it's a pilot, I think. So I think it's quite important that we do look at need as much as exactly where people come from. I did want to raise the fact that we were talking about disproportionate number of properties in Chepstow, because I raised a concern with Councillor Birch some time ago about the acquisition of properties in my ward, that there was one being considered, which I think would have been very, very bad for the area, and I just wanted to be sure that we are looking to acquire properties all around the county rather than just concentrate them in Chepstow. I don't know if that's about need, obviously not from what's been said, but I don't know if it's about cost. Anyway, that one's for again. I have a number of people that I need to make referrals for in my ward at the moment, resulting from relationship breakdown, and it is that relationship breakdown, some of which are caused by domestic abuse, but the breakdown itself has removed that issue. Those people simply now, as a single parent, cannot afford the private rentals. But in relation to linking that to the case study, I would like to ask whether the effect of living in a property where the landlord simply doesn't want you anymore increases the stress on mental health. And also, just one more, you were talking earlier about the 3 to 5 year contract provision, and I think Councillor Birch mentioned, should the council provide things or should they be buy-in services? And I noticed in the report that the Regional Prison Release Service for Wallach and Llamai for family mediation, and I think there was one more, are considered to not be good value for money. And yet as well as that, I also note that we can't pay enough money to recruit people based on what we're getting now. And I just wondered, would we be better off hiring people in-house rather than, as you've mentioned, possibly duplicate services that are not proving to be good value for money? I'll shut up now. Thank you.
You can know.
Thank you. I'd be very interested to see the results of that mental health pilot in Newport. Absolutely, suicide prevention is very important. I think we though, if we're looking within the housing support, need to think about what is rightly commissioned as housing support and what is actually a health and social care responsibility. And I think perhaps different councils have drawn that differently in the past. What we need to be sure of is that the support is there so that we have both low-level support and interventions if things escalate, perhaps. With regard to the predominance of temporary housing in Chepstow, yes, I think that arises from there being more landlords who have been willing to lease to the council in Chepstow in the past. It has given us an imbalance, and yes, the purchase that we were contemplating. I think where we're looking to purchase, we would engage with the ward member, and as a result of our conversations there, we didn't go ahead with that purchase. We are actively purchasing and leasing temporary accommodation all around the county, aware of a particular lack in Monmouth, which the Monmouth Churches Housing Group are keen to work with us on. We've recently, I think the 2 purchases in Abergavenny and several purchases through housing associations as well. So really looking to develop that temporary housing portfolio as well as the permanent social housing around the county.
Could I just ask one little question about that, about what happened with the potential acquisition of the old convent building in Abergavenny?
That property went to auction and was purchased not by one of the RSLs. So we look forward, it still has planning permission for a mix of market and social rented flats, and we look forward to the purchaser bringing that scheme forward. I'm really hoping that it will be developed soon. You were asking about the specialist providers. I think, there are organisations which do have specialist expertise and are perhaps using that specialist expertise developed over years and across Wales and beyond. On the other hand, sometimes that can prove to be a fragile service that is stretched across too wide an area, and I think those are sometimes the judgments that need to be made as to whether we would actually be better providing that service in-house. But there are organisations which do very much have a specialist expertise that perhaps we wouldn't be able to develop within the council.
Can I just ask a question on that point? If somebody was, for instance, a BSR user, would you be able to spot purchase housing support for that person through a specialist organisation, i.e. the BDA or the RNID? Because you quite clearly wouldn't have that expertise in-house.
Yeah, that doesn't. That isn't the practice to spot purchase. What we would probably generally do, if there's something a little bit different, and to be honest with you, it comes up quite regularly that. Somebody's got a bespoke need, but we'll make a point of sitting down with a provider or providers, and it's not uncommon for us to involve social services and look to put together a particular package with with those existing services.
Lovely. I'm sorry for the intro. Councillor Riley, have you had all your questions?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Okay. Can I move on to Christopher Edwards, please?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Birch, for your introduction, and Ian for your presentation, especially the case study. I wasn't actually going to mention Seven View today, but as it has been mentioned, I think I'd better say on behalf of Councillor Pavia and myself how much we enjoyed the sort of open day for residents, for nearby residents the other week. Much appreciated. I know a few of my residents have been in touch since, and yes, there are still some concerns, but probably too early days yet. I'm sure in the next six months or so we'll be having more robust sort of analysis of how things will be going there. But touching on what Councillor Howarth said, I was wondering about your case study and the one of the landlord as well, and your experiences with the landlord. And I was just wondering how much the council sees itself as an educator of landlords. Obviously, the landlord in this case, I'm sure most of them are absolutely perfect or try to do their best, but in this case, it didn't sound like they either didn't know the rules or were sort of blatantly ignoring the rules. But how much is the council an educator in terms of a landlord, a typical landlord out there?
I would say landlord support is a really important part of the mix. The landlord liaison tends to be either through ourselves or through our environmental health. And I know environmental health will take a very positive and supportive role, even when landlords aren't acting correctly. It's about supporting them to act correctly rather than a punitive approach. We have in the past had a landlords forum, and I think that worked well. We use the landlord forum as an opportunity to educate landlords and make landlords aware. Part of us operating that was to actually try and encourage landlords to work more closely with us, and the actual reality was that those landlords that were attending weren't landlords that were working with us. So, but nevertheless, there was still obviously a benefit. But because we were putting in a resource trying to encourage landlords to work with us, and that wasn't resulting in extra properties, we stopped doing it. There's been another piece of work going on called Boost, and I don't know if you've actually seen it. It's actually on the front cover of the hub. So that's a bit of a regional project going on there, and that's provided a bit of landlord support, and that's been very recently as well. So.
Thank you. I don't know whether I thank the team as well down in Seven View just now, but big thanks to them. I appreciated their frankness and openness in answering our many questions on the day, which I'm sure residents did as well. But referring back to the report now, I think it's table 3.6 in the report summary, shows an alarming increase in the domestic abuse figure, nearly double in 1 year. I'm assuming that these are mainly referrals from social services. Could you tell us more about these referrals and the support given, and how many of these actual referrals also concern children and rather than individuals experiencing domestic abuse? Also, I might as well just ask my other questions as well. How are we doing this current year in the general number of referrals across the board, not just domestic abuse? Is there an increase on this time last year? Just to get a feel for demand. And apologies if I've missed this from your presentation earlier on, but it mentions in this table It is the intention to establish additional indicators to further improve the understanding of housing support need, service delivery, and the quality of outcomes being achieved. Could you mention about more about what these additional indicators would be? And my final question is with regard to the issue of staff retention. How much of an issue is this in relation to the numbers of referrals waiting for support, or is it mainly other factors? Thank you.
Yeah, I can't give you the full response in terms of the reasons for the increase in domestic abuse. There's probably a combination of reasons, probably a combination of awareness, a combination of us being more proactive with agencies. So I'd imagine that is part of the story, but I think without doubt it continues to be one of those areas of concern. You know, as a team, we have this steady stream of people presenting because of domestic abuse, and so it's something that we obviously can't ignore, and something that we do need to give you continued attention to. But I'm not able to give you any further breakdown of that. In terms of demand generally, I think it's fairly consistent. Just quickly looking there, so we're hovering around 2,000 referrals a year, and say we're up to 500 for this quarter. So we're heading again for about 2,000. I'd say I think the issues similar with domestic abuse is there's probably scope to put more resources into a particular area. There's probably scope to put more resource into mental health, more resource into domestic abuse. But every time you do that, because we've got a fixed pot, you'd be taking money away from other services, and it's that difficult balance of getting an appropriate balance, that optimum balance. So that's the battle we have. In terms of additional indicators, it's funny, we had a conversation yesterday as a team, again in relation to 7View, about how we are going to measure the effectiveness of support. And at the moment, because of the specifications that we're working with, the quality information that we should be looking at we're not getting, and we need to get it, and we need to really start picking below the surface to better understand that quality. So how are they moving? How is an individual progressing through their support journey? And interestingly, I mean, I'm not a support worker, and my background isn't support, but one of the teams said to me is, you've got to remember that some people, their support journey, the steps might be really, really small. So personal hygiene, for example, relationships, just generally looking after themselves. They are, I say, very, very quite specific, and I say those. They're not necessarily big things in themselves, big for that individual, but not necessarily for reporting purposes. And it's the challenge is how do we translate that somebody's probably struggling with personal hygiene to suddenly be being able to, successfully deal with that issue, and it's how you measure that and how you communicate that. Because obviously, it's that sort of information I'd want to come back to here to tell you that we're achieving this progress with those individuals. And I say it's so nuanced and so detailed, but it is a challenge, and it is a gap that I think we've got here at the moment, because I don't feel I can confidently say, I can't confidently go into that sort of detail for the projects, and that's where we need to get to.
Yes, I think it's worth saying that we do now have sort of fairly high level set of quarterly and monthly indicators that we're looking at. That figure with regards to the numbers of people accessing housing support who have a domestic abuse issue really stood out to me, and we are doing a piece of work to try and fully understand whether that indicates that we're seeing an increase in the levels of domestic abuse in Monmouthshire, or whether we actually have a housing support team who are reaching more people who need them. I'm not sure at the moment which we're seeing.
Yeah, so it's probably. And then your last question about staff retention, I think it's slightly improving. We have had this is from a project and an external provider perspective. Some of the providers have had some real difficult issues in terms of that staff retention, and again, what they found when they're recruiting. They're probably recruiting less experienced people, so we need to get to, or the sector as a whole, and Wales as a whole, needs to get to a position where there is more stability. You want housing support to be seen as a career of choice, and people being interested and wanting to go into it. And obviously, we as a local authority have got a role in supporting individual providers to be attractive employers. But it's something that certainly Welsh Government are battling with at the moment, and I guess in your circles, it's something that's not uncommon. So it's not resolved, but I think it is a slightly better position as we speak.
Okay, is that a major concern though in the factor of people or referrals waiting for support, or is it just one of the major ones or a minor one?
No, it's not really behind the waiting for support. It's more the wait is just because projects just haven't got the capacity anyway. But yeah, we've had some situations which has created quite high staff to client ratios. So an individual support worker, in the best will in the world, is not going to work very effectively with, say, like, probably any casework over 10, bearing in mind that because floating support, by its very nature, you're spending half your time driving, to get from one case to the other. So the lower we can get those ratios, the better.
Going back to my original question about table 3.6, I fully appreciate that you haven't got the full details of the domestic abuse figure and the level of support and so on, but do we have any figures on how many of these referrals concern children? Obviously there'll be a different sort of extra factors involved.
Yeah, let me if I because there will be additional figures behind this, and say if Trudy was here, she'd probably know the answer, but I'll see what else I can dig out to expand on that domestic abuse situation. So
okay, thank you both.
Jan, you're next. you want to ask your questions. Thank you. And thanks for your patience.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you both for the presentation and the information given so far. Very informative. Thank you. I'm really sorry to have missed the Seven View visit last week, and I would love to take up. I think the offer was made for another visit, so I'd really love to go down and have a look, because I haven't been there since it was initially taken over with planning. I've got three questions, actually. I don't know whether it's just I've misinterpreted. First of all, about money being used in favour of security, 24-hour security rather than 24-hour support at Seven View. I need a bit of clarity on that. That's how I interpreted it. I'm sure I'm wrong. I think Councillor Riley and Councillor Birch have already talked a little bit about provision elsewhere, particularly in the north of the county. And my question really is there anywhere in our estate that we're actually currently looking at for a similar facility in the north? And my third question, I think, again, in part, I think Councillor Birch has answered this. Do we actually have any cross-border agreements? You know, here in Goitra, I'm very close to the communities of Newin, Trevethin and Blaenavon. So I know quite often I've got, you know, people who have some connection with Goitra wanting to move into Goitra. But I'm thinking also more here that, you know, other parts of our county, you know, obviously those are in Torfaen in Wales, but there are other parts of our county, and I think Councillor Howarth has already alluded to this, where Monmouth, for example, where we're close to the boundary with England, so we're close to the boundary with Hereford and Forest of Dean. So do we have some cross-border agreements at all? And those are my three questions. Thank you.
Thank you for those. The 24-hour security, the ideal scenario is you would have a complete package. So you'd be providing 24-hour supported accommodation, and you would have support workers that would operate on site all of the time. And if you set it up correctly, that would be eligible for housing support grant funding. It's obviously not a cheap model because of that level of intensity, but we're probably one of the few counties in Wales that are lacking that type of accommodation. So what we've done, we use security to manage the front door, and obviously help protect the building. And we pay for that separately. So previously, we were supported by Welsh governments. Initially, it was through the emergency COVID payments. So that certainly, I can't remember whether it covered all of the costs, but it certainly covered some of the cost. And as we're going into Seven View, we're effectively paying for that security through the rents. So we get a rental income, and an element of that will go towards the rent. So we've created a hybrid arrangement, essentially, because we don't have enough housing support grant, and we're just blending different sources of monies together. But the ideal, I will say the security that we do use are fantastic. We've been working with them now for 5 or 6 years, and they're not the stereotypical doorman that you would expect. They understand the client group, very good with the client group, and they're very supportive of us as a local authority. So, but it's not the model that you would ideally set out to do, and it's just to keep us going, really. So that's that. MCC estate, to answer your question, yes. My team, we meet weekly with our estates team to discuss opportunities. And particularly in the north, I'm trying to remember what we have looked at. We have looked at buildings in the centre of Monmouth. No surprises that the buildings that are there don't really lend themselves to accommodation. I think there's 3. I'm looking at Kath. I think there's about 3 in Monmouth that we've looked at and considered, but they wouldn't be. The problem is they just wouldn't be easy projects to convert into accommodation. But they have provided some, and they are working with us on the acquisitions that Councillor Birch just mentioned as well. So they're ensuring that acquisitions are suitable and not going to cause us long-term problems. And then your last question, cross-border agreements. Probably to answer you simplistically, no, we don't really have any cross-border agreements. There's informal arrangements when it comes to Newport might ring us up and say, could you accommodate somebody for a particular reason because they couldn't accommodate in Newport, and we will say okay, but that enables us to enables Newport to accommodate somebody for us a bit further down the line. So there's a little bit of that, but there's no great volume to it. And occasionally the police will approach us or approach other authorities and say, you can't accommodate somebody here, you need to find somewhere else with them. So we work with the police and public protection around that. So, and then I think the only other area is within the homeless law. Again, as Councillor Birch alluded, there is Homeless Connect. We work to having a local connection, but that doesn't exclude people that need to move here, perhaps for safety reasons, where they can demonstrate that there is a local connection. So you do get a bit of movement into the county and out of the county, for safety reasons.
Okay, thank you very much for those answers.
Oh, Jan, do you want to come back on anything, or you're happy?
No, I think my questions have been adequately answered, and I'm a bit clearer now. The question of security really is the one that concerns me the most. But I think we have the solution, the best possible solution at the moment. Thank you.
Thanks, Jan. Can I move on to Louise Brown, please? Can you ask your question? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, as you know, I've been involved with the Monmouth Churches Together group, and some of the questions that arise from that connection came through the Place Committee. So I don't believe I have to declare an interest, but I'm mentioning it anyway. Some of the issues that arose really were to do with thank you for your involvement with them, and long may it continue. But some of the issues that arose were just general issues, obviously not case issues, but it was, on occasions the gap between when somebody said they were homeless and when they were actually determined as homeless, and whether or not any of the people that you contract with deal with that, or whether or not any resources could be set aside to deal with that particular issue. Because obviously, if there's a multi-agency approach from social workers, police and housing options, it's not as quick as necessarily you would like it to be. And you did mention in your presentation about this being brief. So I think, that is a bit of a concern, and the weekend gap, because of the fact that this is dealt with on a Gwent-wide basis as opposed to a Monmouthshire basis. So those were a set of questions in relation to that particular issue. It's already been mentioned about Abergavenny and Monmouth, and about the need for more accommodation in the north of the county. And I just wondered whether there were actively any potential expansion of accommodation in those particular areas. I also wanted to ask a question about, you've already mentioned about the issues of domestic abuse and so forth that you currently have to deal with under the current legislation. And then we're talking about the new Wales bill on it, which may require extra resources as well. Is the council putting in sort of responses to the Welsh Parliament about this Wales bill and its resource implications, and is this being discussed? Because obviously it will have, when you're in a situation where you'd like more housing support grant already, and then extra demands are potentially coming our way, then this really needs to be addressed. And another question was to do with Abergavenny as a town of sanctuary. How does this impact housing need for homelessness, and which area of the council deals with this, and where do the resources come from? Thank you.
Thank you for those. Again, if I'm understanding your first question correctly, I think you're referring to out-of-hours arrangements. The out-of-hours arrangements obviously aren't as they are during office hours. So we do have an emergency phone line available. We originally did it with it was a tripartite arrangement with Torfaen, Blaenau Gwent, and ourselves. Torfaen have now withdrawn, and if they haven't withdrawn already, it's imminent, and that's because they've set up a homeless project in Pontypool, and they want to use one of their resources from that project for their out of hours. So going forward, it's just going to be Monmouthshire and Blaenau Gwent. Obviously, being a shared arrangement, it does save us a little bit of money, but nobody would be left knowingly vulnerable if anyone came through that needed accommodation in the middle of the night or over the weekend. We would provide that accommodation subject to being confident about any risks or issues. So it is a minimal service, but anything that does happen over a weekend or in the evening, we will pick it up first thing the next working day. Abergavenny and Monmouth, again, as Councillor Birch, I can only reiterate what Councillor Birch has said. There is an ongoing quest for additional accommodation right across the county, not just Abergavenny and Monmouth, but obviously there are areas of priority, and we are looking. Well, we'll look at every opportunity possible to provide accommodation. Some of the headlines for you coming up are we've got the RLDP, which is going through, so we've got strategic sites in Abergavenny and Monmouth. I would anticipate and hope that those will deliver. Well, they will deliver additional affordable homes, which in themselves will also benefit homelessness. And we're pushing and leaning on our RSL partners to be more focused on town centres. Town centres notoriously difficult to work with for a variety of reasons. But we've, again, Councillor Birch and ourselves, we've sat down at the Strategic Forum and said, we need you to go in there. We need you to overcome these barriers and these challenges. So we've got a little bit of initial success, provisional opportunities identified in Monmouth, where we're hoping that we'll get something over the next. I mean, we're probably talking in the years rather than overnight, but we've certainly got stuff in the pipeline, haven't we? So.
If I can add, I think it's really important that the teams and the services that we fund are working with that community support. Having met with the Monmouth Churches Housing Group, I've been so impressed with the one-to-one assistance that the churches do provide to people who are homeless or threatened with homelessness. And in the same way, the Town of Sanctuary group in Abergavenny and the churches in Abergavenny are really supporting people to integrate into the community. I think there's sometimes a misunderstanding about Town of Sanctuary that it doesn't actually influence the number of people who are refugees or asylum seekers who come to live in that community, but does enable them to become more integrated into that community in the same way as the churches are supporting people who are homeless of any background, and it's really important that we work with that.
You asked about bill engagement with Welsh Government. I can tell you that the levels of engagement with Welsh Government are massive in relation to this bill. So I've attended umpteen seminars. Welsh Government have asked us to provide cost information. They've obviously supported local authorities with additional resources over previous years. Unfortunately, there tends to be a bit of a lag, but nevertheless, the resources that we're getting for homelessness are significantly higher than they previously were. And the practice with Welsh Government has been that when new legislation has been passed, they've made available grant funding to help us implement it. And so I would anticipate that that's something along those lines will happen, again on this. Local authorities are most definitely lobbying Welsh Government and raising concerns about the resource implications. We've got resource implications now. The law's expected to change probably in about a year's time, which will increase demand, increase responsibilities, and it potentially could have a staffing implications. So, Welsh Government know that, and as an authority, we have responded directly to consultation exercises. So.
Yes, if I can chip in there, as you'd expect, there has been officer to official engagement and responses put in by the authority. The Minister has also met regularly with the group of housing cabinet members through the WLGA. Now that we've seen the face of the bill and it's going through committee, I think there are a lot of things that I am reassured about where we've raised concerns. We're all, I think, united in sharing the objectives of the bill, but there are concerns about the implementation and timescales, and I think those have been taken on board.
Councillor
Could I come back, Chair? Yeah, because I'm not quite sure whether the question about the town of Sanctuary was answered, because I do know, obviously, in relation to the Ukraine families, that, the council had a particular section of the council dealing with that particular issue, and obviously host families can be involved and the government provides financial support for that, but I wasn't quite sure what was happening with regard to providing accommodation for those of other nationalities, and I think what Councillor Birch was saying about churches assisting and so forth, I think and communities have assisted in that sort of thing, but I just don't think I necessarily got an answer on that question. Thank you.
Well, I can give you a bit of an update on that. That we know as an authority, as all other authorities, the Home Office is looking for us to play more of a direct role in regards to both asylum seekers and refugees. So we are doing a bit of preparation work, which I'm involved with, and I think we're working on the basis that we don't want any provision that we do to impact on our day-to-day provision. So that would be the focus. So there would be no impact on our existing housing need, because it obviously would create potentially additional demand. But so it is on the radar, and there is preparation work being done in regards to that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so currently, I suppose, apart from the Ukraine support system, then there isn't anything else in place from central government or the Welsh Parliament then. Thank you.
It's not working. Did you want to come back on that, Ian, or are you happy to move on? Yeah. Councillor Bond, I can see that you've got your hand up. You're next. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the presentation and all the brilliant work you do. Really, really appreciate everything that you do for the people of Monmouthshire. You've helped out a number of times for people, vulnerable people. So my question is, so I can see from the well, I had other questions, actually, they've been answered already. But another question is, I can see the plan is, so 25th of July, generic theme planning group, and then 1st of April, 2026, new generic services contract starts. So there's a lot to do in that time. I suggest, I guess, is it yourselves that's doing a lot of that work? Have you got other resource to help this change progress? Because you obviously, if you've got 400 cases that you're working on all the time, then you're pretty busy all the time. And looking at the risks, could you expand some more about how you can help mitigate those risks, particularly to the employees of those other service providers who might be feeling vulnerable and in limbo possibly until the contracts are signed? Thank you.
We've done a lot of generic services work prior, so we're not starting from a blank piece of paper. So we've been working on preparing for generic services. Probably started last summer. So the main work has been done. We just now need to implement. It's about implementing the tender process. So the planning group that we've got, that's an internal group, and that's a bit of a health check opportunity. So we want services to be able to say, yes, that ticks our box, yes, we think that works, etc., etc., and then say them. So if you like, finishing it off should be relatively straightforward. We get good support from Cardiff City through Ardle. They're very much involved with it, and I know from this morning there was emails to and fro from from Cardiff. But we've got a small team of people that are focused on the commissioning and contract management. So I think there is sufficient capacity with Cardiff to manage that. And once we get into a like a staggered approach, we'll only be dealing with like one or probably two tenders at the most, as opposed to trying to deal with 20 at the same time. I'm quite confident with where we've got to, and with the support that we've had from Ardle. And the risks, sorry, can you ask me that question again?
Just the risks for option one, if you look on the options appraisal, very much a risk to providers in respect to the potential contracts. Council may need to indemnify potential redundancy costs in tendering arrangements. So really around working with those providers. And so obviously you've been thinking about that. I just wondered if you could explain a bit what you've been doing.
So obviously the last thing that we want to do with any contractual arrangement is impact on people's employment. But obviously, by the very nature and reality of tendering, there's always a possibility that a provider may not win a tender, which then has a knock-on impact to their staffing. But the reality is that I think the final programme that we end up, I don't think will look massively different from what we've got. I would be most surprised if our existing providers I'd be surprised if they weren't interested in tendering. We've got good providers, so as a team we would be happy to continue to work with any of those. But in the unfortunate incident that a provider didn't win a contract, 2P obligations would apply, which would mean that some staff could transfer from one organisation to another. I think the numbers of people that you were talking about would probably be relatively small. Another thing that we have started doing, and we've done already, it's called a market event. And under the procurement arrangements, we organised a market event for any provider that was interested in bidding for generic services. So we had a session here in the chamber, and we had, I don't know how many providers came, probably 11, 12, something like that. And it's a two-way opportunity to convey what we need and what we're looking for as an authority, but it's also an opportunity for providers to say, you've not done X, you've not done Y, why don't you do A, why don't you do B? So it's a real quality it's a quality engagement opportunity, and it's something that I've never been involved with, so it was new to me. But that will be the routine for all of these future contracts as we go forward. And I say, having attended one and participated in one, I can really see the value in it. So,
Councillor Bott, do you want to come back?
Yes, please. So you've discussed about the providers and yourselves and the local authority. I wonder, is there an opportunity to look at the other stakeholders, and maybe we had a recent example where vulnerable people were not being represented by their members. I don't know whether there's a part to play for members who was supporting their residents, possibly, and putting the voice of the residents forward, possibly in this process, and also what part will you be playing in the decision-making process? Is it totally out of your hands? Is it with Ardor? What sort of input will you have, please? Thank you.
Well, in terms of the voice of service users, again, something that we've made very clear that would be part of the process. I've even put it on the agenda for our meeting next week about how best to do that. What are the opportunities to do that? And our specification will very much reflect feedback that we've had from service users. I'll give you an example. At the moment, we've got 2 separate arrangements for temporary accommodation and rough sleepers. So what we're finding at the moment is rough sleepers will be supported when they're accommodated. Their support provider will change. So, I mean, again, it's the blindingly blimmin' obvious, but it's been pointed out to us. Wouldn't it be much better if you had one provider that covered both? You know, so you've got continuity, and people aren't having to retell their story and develop new relationships. So, it's that sort of thing that we're looking for, and obviously completely open to considering. And yeah, we do need to build that as best we can into the process. We have talked about, we will have a panel that will be assessing tenders. I don't expect it. I wouldn't expect me personally to be on that panel, but the team will be on the panel, and that will be with Ardle. And again, we have talked about, is there a role for a potential service user or service users as part of that process? No decisions have been made, and I'm still trying to get my head around how best we do that. But again, the point is well made that what we want at the end of this has got to work, and we want residents and the local population to be at the heart of this. So completely understand your question.
Thank you, and please think of the local members or as representatives of those people if their voices need to be raised. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Well, it would be, if I would say to all councillors, if you have any experiences of the service with your residents, with any of our services, whether that's good, bad or indifferent, then I would be very interested to hear them. Obviously, once we get into a formal procurement process, any kind of political involvement would be inappropriate.
Thank you. I think Councillor Riley wants to just come back quickly.
Due to the nature of some of the temporary accommodation within my ward, I get a lot of inquiries from temporary residents, one of which, and it's becoming something of a theme of mine with some of the ward work that I do, that we have the working poor, that the cost of temporary accommodation to people who are working puts them into that working poor category, and they are paying. I just wanted some explanation if there was anything we can do for those people who have a very small room in shared accommodation and are paying considerably more for that accommodation because they work, than other people within the accommodation, but also than they would be if they had their own property. Is there a reasonable explanation for that?
The explanation is it's obviously trying to operate a service and provide accommodation, that washes its own face financially. I mean, that's the reality of it. The rents that we set, I think we acknowledge that they were probably on the higher side. And I do recognise that some of the accommodation that we provide is also it's not the optimum. It's not what we're aiming for. We want self-contained accommodation and not shared. So we are. The aim is to replace our shared with self-contained accommodation, and we have started that. So the stock has gone down, but nevertheless we've got that here and now, and it's trying to get to that. It's been around that balance between trying to provide a service that's not causing cost contributions to the I mean, we've caused enough problems in terms of homeless overspends to a service that is affordable, and I think it's a fair point. We haven't got it at that optimum place at the moment. So we do have a small number of people who do work who it obviously does impact on detrimentally. So
I suppose it's the disincentive to work that bothers me.
Yeah. And again, that's a fair point.
Thank you.
It is, and it's an issue we're aware of in terms of supported accommodation for young people as well. Ultimately, the answer is for us to have more affordable accommodation so that we can move people out of temporary accommodation as quickly as possible, and we can move young people out of that supported accommodation as and when they're ready to move. We are developing new accommodation at pace, but the big wins I think are probably through approval of the replacement local development plan. That pipeline of new sites, of new properties, so that we start to address the under provision of affordable housing in this county.
Thank you, Sarah. Councillor Webb, and can I bring you in next, because you've not spoken. Jill's had two questions or two go. So, okay. Councillor Webb, you're next, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. Very interesting morning. Thank you so much, Ian, and for the team, for all that you do. I really appreciate all the work. Just one thing. If a person is offered accommodation and they don't accept, how many bites of the cherry do they get? I know somebody that just doesn't want to take a particular property. I was just wondering how far you go into this. And also, with regard to the mental health screening, can you remind me how you go about this, and is it through another authority? I think you did mention this, but I can't remember what you said, Ian. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
You've put me on the spot there. I think if I remember rightly, we changed it to homeless applicants only had one option, one refusal. I'm pretty sure that's the case. So I'll double check, because it used to be two, but I think we did change it to one. And the reason was, again, the need to push people on through temporary accommodation and keep that a minimum. And sorry, your second question. Sorry, that I didn't understand.
This mental health screening. Do we use another authority? You said that we didn't have that facility in Monmouthshire, and if so, how do we go about this mental health screening and mental health problems?
I don't know whether any other authorities do it per se, but what it's about, it would be about having a professional, somebody with a mental health profession background within the team, who can provide more specialist advice but more importantly, they could bridge the professional gap between, if you like, us as housing officers and mental health workers in social care and mental health workers in health. So we have a lot of people coming through all the time with mental health issues, and we believe that if you had that role, it would improve the quality of the advice and information and our ability to assess people, but also I think it would help with our communication and partnership working with external agencies. So we do get pushbacks sometimes, or we do get scenarios where that we don't necessarily agree with, and it's been in a position where you can probably better challenge those sort of, or better query those sort of scenarios. And overall, I think that would help us provide a far better quality of service to people with mental health issues. We did actually, a few years ago, I can't remember how long ago it was, but probably 3-4 years, we did actually advertise for a mental health social worker to be part of the team. And we didn't get any applicants. So I think the idea was knocked on the head at the time. But we'd be keen to revisit that if there was a possibility.
I think what you hear there is one of the many opportunities that arise through integrating the housing team within the social care directorate.
Thank you, Sarah. That's really interesting. I think for those elected members that did the seminar last week on suicide, I think we need to be very mindful that there are lots of gaps that people fall by the wayside, and how you support people through really, really challenging, difficult times. I really do like the idea of, rough sleepers, keeping the same person as they go through their journey to hopefully securing a tenancy and, and a better quality of life, really. And then you can get the qualitative evidence to say this is what's working, and this is the best way of doing things. So I really like that idea. Most of the questions that I wanted to ask have been answered. Really interested about 7 View, the implications of Welsh Government legislation for us as a county. But I can see that Councillor Bond has got her hand up, so I want to draw the meeting to an ending. But if you've got a quick question, please ask it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, everybody. I just wanted to respond to the Cabinet member, Councillor Birch. I don't think I made myself clear, perhaps I didn't explain very well. So for me, representing residents is not political. It is representing residents and representing their voice. So wasn't expecting for any member to be involved in the tendering process whatsoever. And of course, the voice of the customer of a service is absolutely crucial in that service. And the other thing was that I've put indication about possible measures in the chat. If we want to discuss that further, thank you.
Yes, thank you. That's really useful. I'm familiar with the core forms. I'm not sure whether that's something that we use. And I would say to all councillors, if you have experience of the service, if there are issues, if you're picking up issues from residents, I know you do raise them with Ian and the team, but if you could see, if those issues illustrate a policy gap or a service gap or something that isn't working, do please pick up the phone. Thank you.
I can see Jan's now got a hand up.
Sorry, just just come back in on that, Sarah. Hoarding support. What hoarding support are we giving at the moment? I notice it's in the sort of like the forward planning post the change in the Act, but what hoarding support are we giving at the moment?
We're working with an agency called Holistic Hoarding. It's a relatively new project, probably less than a year old, I would imagine. They are experiencing considerable demand. I think we know that we know it's associated with mental health, and we know it's not a quick fix. But having introduced the service, the number of referrals coming in and the waiting list is considerable. So a bigger project would definitely bring something to the table. But a very good new project that we're pleased with.
Sorry, what did you call them again?
Holistic Hoarding is the name of the company. So they've got then they've got a website.
Thank you very much for that, as I have a few hoarders. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan.
Being one myself.
Well,
thank you.
Well, I'm not making any comment about the strong household either. But anyway, so thank you ever so much, everybody, for your contributions this morning. It's been a really interesting discussion. We've got a better idea of, your team and the people that support homeless people and people at risk of homelessness around the county. Thanks, Sarah, for coming as well and your contribution. I just need to move on to get an indication from people present about, I can see Simon's got his hand up a minute. Do you want to say something, Simon?
Yeah, from the recommendations, are we going to do any more work on this reference to the awarding of the contract is going to be the end of December? So it means we will be going to Cabinet before, just after that, is it, on reference to the approach?
Is that to Ian or?
Well, it's to us as a committee really more than anything. Where do we want to take this from now, or we're just going to sit back and wait for the process to move forward? Because there are implications with the 2P and stuff like that, and I just feel, should we perhaps ask for us as a way forward, do we leave it on the agenda, or do we request that we bring it back here in 6 months' time? Or I don't know, not my decision, but how important do we feel that?
I think Ian wants to come in a minute.
Because I do have real concerns with the numbers game here, because you've made it really clear that we're maybe 9 abbreviated in the document, maybe double that. You may want to double up on some of them. I know you've pointed them. So there is a numbers game here on making sure that we have the numbers. I just want a way forward, really, or we move on and wait to see you soon.
Yeah. Well, the just to be clear, this is going to Cabinet. I've just noticed that the recommendation is slightly incorrect, but so this will go to Cabinet. And again, I know Councillor Birch and the Cabinet were keen for this to be, very transparent and clear. I would personally welcome you having it back again, because I think this is I just think this is, £3 million at the end of the day is a lot of money, and I think this is a really important service. And I suppose my ask of you as a committee is you always see housing support being part of homelessness and being an integral part, because it's just as important as a roof. So I'm happy to bring back reports here, whatever period that you'd like, and we can also do members seminars again. We've done a members seminar previously, and that's why today was an all member invitation, because we felt it was so important that members were aware of this.
Ian, I think it's been really, really useful this morning, and obviously not all elected members have had the chance to contribute or to be here this morning. I'm just wondering how the committee might, how it would sit for a progress report, say, to come back to scrutiny.
I think, Chair, just looking at bullet point 318, of members haven't got the agenda. I'll just read them out. The first tender will be generic services. The broad timeline for preparing the project and establishing the contract is July this year, 25th. Late September, the tender issued on sell to Wales. End of December, the contract is awarded. January to March, transition period. I'm just going on something there, making sure that everything's going well or whatever. If you don't get no tenders, you get nobody interested. Or we've got a massive issue with some 2P issues or whatever. It's our job to make sure that we're getting the best for our constituents and residents. Would it be better perhaps in between January and March, just giving us an update of how things have gone? Or I don't know. I just try to keep things alive here.
Can I just say perhaps a members' seminar on how things are going? Would that be, and then we'd have a bigger reach than just the 9 of us. I know that we've had some visitors this morning, but it would be more than just nine of us involved then.
Would it be appropriate? I think you've previously monitored the delivery of the rapid rehousing plan. And would it be appropriate to incorporate reporting back on how this procurement process is going within that general report which the committee receives on housing services, so that we would obviously take your feedback into account in the process and of the tendering exercise in shaping that. Cabinet will approve the start of that. It then is really a technical officer-led procurement process. But I would really welcome the opportunity to come back and report back on that, on how housing support is working.
One of the main things for me, Chair, is, as we all know, we had an issue with a contract being awarded for dom care, some time ago, because of issues revolving around the process, etc. And I think I just don't want to get into that same situation here, that we're fully involved in making sure we know what's going on. That was the only and the 2P issue, and it's just quite clear, possible risk of redundancies in the event of providers. We're talking about people's jobs and livelihoods here as well. So I just want to make sure that we are, as a council, doing things properly and keeping everything up to date with us as a committee and council generally. Thank you.
Sure. So what is the feeling that a progress report back with the rapid housing support, is it?
It's due for October.
Hazel's whispering in our ears. I think the discussion here is probably in December or January. Are members happy with that? January. I think obviously we've got to give time for the process to take place. But
what about an update, Chair? Let's say in January we have an update of where we are on things, on matters, and an update on the procurement, how it went. To award this contract then would be the end of December. So it's saying here, tenders issued on sell to Wales late September, that's not very far away. End of December 25, award the contract. So the Cabinet will have to make a decision then on whether you award the contract or not? No?
No, I don't think it has to go. I don't think the award of the contract, the starting of the process, the shape of the process, we've chosen to bring into Cabinet for greater visibility. The awarding the contract doesn't require a Cabinet decision. That's the advice I've been given.
However, but we do need to, make sure that things are on track, and that if there are any lessons to be learned or any sort of snags, that we keep an eye on that, really. So if we look at sort of December or January time to fit in with other reports that come from your team, I think that would be the most sensible, really.
Chair, could I just add, because we were assured that any major sort of officers' decisions which were of a major nature, we would be informed of and would be subject to call-in. That was in the new constitution. Is that not the case? Would this come under that?
I think the major decision is the decision to go to tender, and that is. Yeah.
Any contract award is made within policy. We are following policy and procedure. Yeah.
Can I just ask you, Ian, just to clarify option 1 for us?
You said, Ian, that the recommendations were worded slightly differently, so could you just clarify that, and then the Chair will ask the committee if they support the recommendations in the report, which you'll propose in option 1, aren't you?
So today is you've scrutinised the process, and there's a decision to be made by the Cabinet about the procurement in this way. So today, all you're doing is scrutinising and challenging that that approach and feeding your comments in. So, and then I say the next step, I think it's 17th of September. It's booked for Cabinet.
Yes, so, to confirm the approach that we're taking and to start the procurement process. Yeah.
Okay. So are we as a committee happy with that? Do we support it rather than happy? Okay. Councillor Powell? Oh, putting it, hand up. Okay. So there seems to be consensus so that we can say that the...
So are we... I'm going back to the question I asked earlier, is are we looking to procure outside or to provide within the council? I'm not clear on that.
I would any procurement would be outside, and the decision would be any individual contract. Can we deliver it internally or externally? If it's external, it would go out to tender. And as Councillor Birch has said, most of the services that we've got are specialist services. So we haven't got the internal expertise. No, I don't think we would be best placed to be delivering a domestic abuse project, for example, because that's not our experience or specialism. So,
may I ask, Chair, then? So if we're going out to tender and we feel that we need to go externally because of the expertise, etc., will we be still using the system that we have with Cardiff? Cardiff, okay. I don't have a lot of confidence in it, to be honest with you, but I'm just safeguarding us as a committee, making sure that we don't want to fall back saying, well, actually, you should have actually gone through the exercise. So would it be not in our interest, Chair, as a committee then, to make sure that if we are going out to procurement with Cardiff, how many of the, in brackets, are we procuring out, let's say? It may be 90% of what we're after we'll have to procure out. That's really important that actually we're relying on others to procure for us. We're not doing it in-house. Correct? This is only stemming from, I think we've had lots of problems with our overall procurement package that we have with others. It seems to always bounce back on us with things.
Kath, did you want to say something?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, please. Kath Fallon, Head of Housing. We actually have our procurement services in a collaboration agreement with ARDL. So ARDL officers are supporting our team in this procurement exercise. The procurement exercise will culminate in an officer decision. What we are ensuring is that we will also have that user experience built in. As Councillor Burgess said, we will also invite members who have got input they wish to give that to the team to ensure that that is taken into account throughout the procurement process. So we are therefore then looking to update you on that procurement activity as we've agreed in January. Does that all sound okay?
I have no issues, Chair. The only thing which keeps popping up to mind is when we went out to procurement with the other one, we ended up with mass problems with it because of the dom care issue. We've had the milk thing, we've had all sorts of procurement things which have happened within this council in the last couple of years. I just don't want problems to come back with us on this one. So as a committee, as a scrutiny committee, I just want to make sure that we are focused on making sure we get this right. We haven't got the others right. Let's get this one right.
Councillor Howarth, your views are noted. Obviously it's an officer-led process, but we need to also monitor what's going on, and we'll have progress back to us. And actually, if there are any hiccups, we'd like to know sort of sooner rather than later, if that's agreeable to the team. So thank you for your input this morning. Sure. I think Hazel wants to just comment on next week's meeting and just a quick discussion.
Yeah, just to be aware, members, next week's meeting is really heavy. It's got 4 reports on there. One is a petition. It's 2 petitions, but will be dealt with by one item. But we know that we have members of the public come into the public open forum that want to speak on that. So, yeah, even though we don't discuss petitions in great detail at the meeting, we do have to agree a way forward for them. And there are 4 options available to the committee, which we'll talk about. They're in my report, which is on the agenda. But just to draw your attention to the fact that it's a long meeting with substantial items, one of which would have been on today's agenda, but it was deferred because it wasn't ready in time. So please be prepared for an extended meeting. But we have asked officers to keep presentation to 10 minutes to allow plenty of time for questions for each item. But I think we will have to sort of allocate some timings to that agenda.
Can I just add to that we will be asking the relevant cabinet members to attend, but we also want to keep their sort of interventions to a minimum as well. So I hope that the committee is happy to proceed that way. Can I just thank everyone for their attendance today, and see you next week, the 22nd. Yeah, so see you next week. Thanks for your interventions. Thanks for the discussion, and see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.